Let there be sound. I am really excited about tonight. We're going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, which is getting people activated in ministry, discovering your spiritual gifts. And I'm going to introduce my guest here in a second, but we want to welcome you guys here in the room. Excuse me, weather has my throat a little messed up. And also those who are watching online. There is a possibility Clay is watching from Dallas, or from Fort Worth. So everybody just say hi, Clay. And he may not be, so he may see this later, so that'll be okay too. So we are really glad to welcome our special guests tonight, Susan Galeas, who's a friend of mine, and Kevin Roberts. We're going to say a word about them here in a second. And then Jerry Johnson, who has just recently come on as our missions field coordinator here at the church. So we are so glad that they have joined us. Susan Galeas has served as the president and CEO of the Family Center in Nashville since 2017. She has over 25 years of experience in nonprofit management, fund development, public policy, and marketing, and has served as a nonprofit executive in Chattanooga and Los Angeles. She is also originally from my hometown in New Orleans, but we can top that, can't we?
We can.
Yeah. We went to the same high school. We graduated from the same high school, in the New Orleans area. So the high school that I went to was an all-girls school when she graduated. And then I was just a couple years later. So welcome, Susan Galeas. Glad you're here with us tonight. Kevin Roberts is a vocational and entrepreneurial minister. I grabbed it off your LinkedIn, by the way. I love that. He has served in Texas, Kentucky, and South Carolina. Now serves as the director of faith relations for Habitat for Humanity in the greater Nashville area. So, Kevin, we're so glad that you are here with us. You work regularly with our Habitat organization here, too. And then Jerry Johnson, as you know, has recently come on staff at Woodmont as our church's missions field coordinator. Jerry's had a long business career, having worked for over 30 years at UBS. He was the managing director and then director of marketing, for Tennessee and then also for Kentucky for UBS. And then felt a call to ministry, which we're going to talk about tonight. Yeah. So Jerry's going to get a chance to share about his call to ministry. So our themes tonight really are around activating people in faith. So when folks come to our church and begin asking what are ways for us to get plugged in, we want to speak to that tonight. We want to talk about how people identify and begin moving in their spiritual giftedness. And so how do your gifts match up with a ministry that you can get plugged into and get active in? And then also, maybe God has also put a ministry on your heart, a way for you to serve others. And so every ministry that we have here at our church started with, I would call them a Holy Spirit prompting, that started with someone getting a move in their heart to just care and love for other people. And so whoever was in leadership at the church at the time began gathering some people around that idea and around that ministry. And so now we've got Room at the Inn and Habitat and about 40 other ministries that are active in the life of Woodmont. So it's very exciting. If you've ever been to our mission fair here at the church, you've seen all the tables set up and all the ministries that people have just huge hearts for here. So we want to begin, we put together a video in the last couple of weeks that talks about people who do ministry here at the church. It's an interview with them as they talk about spiritual giftedness and what their passion and heart is for ministry, and then also just how they develop leaders in that ministry. So this is going to include Brent Wiles, who does Room at the Inn, Andrew Moran, who's with the Bridge Ministry, Abby McLean, who does our children's ministry, Christy Harrison, who does Habitat, and Vance McGuigan, who does Habitat, and also Rich Sanderson, who does our Green Street ministry. You guys are the first people to ever see this video. As soon as you see it tonight, it's going to go on our website and also be something that we show when folks come to our intro to Woodmont class. So go ahead and take a look at this.
Church. Having grown up here, I knew deep down that I had a deep passion for this place and ministry and bringing more people into Woodmont. And so when I found out that this job opening was available, I thought long and hard about it. I prayed about it. I talked with Justin about it. I talked with Clay about it. And ultimately, I was offered this position. But it was very deep-seated in me that I wanted to be able to give back to the place that did so much for me growing up.
I think for me it was probably just as much doing as it was a calling. I just did it, and I very much enjoyed it. I probably got more out of it than our guests that evening. And I saw Deb and Steve had a lot on their plate at the time, and of course they've moved on. But I inherited, I guess, the project when they left.
I have always had this propensity to have a heart for the less than. I've always had the ability to take time to listen to those that were, let's say, young. I remember with the young kids that were my peers that were bullied or that had that were just different, and I would spend time with them. Which they were alone. They really were isolated. Working with Green Street Church homeless camp parlays perfectly into that.
So I reached out to Steve LaForge in 2021, hoping for an opportunity to serve with my kids. And Steve said that he actually had a need for a volunteer coordinator for Habitat for Humanity. So that is how it came to be. I said yes, and it's a great mission, and found a friend who was able to do that with me, and that's how it came to be. And it wasn't necessarily the answer I was looking for, but it's been an amazing opportunity.
I've always been called by the passage in Luke where Jesus says, to whom much is given, much is expected and required. So when Vance reached out about Habitat, I felt like it was kind of the nudge to say yes. And Habitat's great in that you can really use your hands and see like a tangible giving back to our community.
Really, my interest in art and all forms of art came from recognizing that that's where God finds me most, right? Like I feel God's presence most through music and through art and through poetry and through architecture. And so, that little tug of realizing that that's where God meets me, well, that was interesting to me because I knew other people probably had the same experience, and what a cool thing to be offered a spot to be able to do that in community.
We have such a gift to build a foundation for our students and for our children here at Woodmont. I think that, Jesus wanted children to come to him. He wanted them to be a part of his ministry. And what better way to do that than to build this solid foundation, whether it's through play or music or Bible stories or cooking or art. We're laying a very solid foundation for them here.
I think for our guests, they don't have a place to stay at night, and my guess is that some of them probably are in some seedy situations sometime, and I think that certainly by housing them and feeding them for a night and treating them they're as valuable as any member of this church, and so I feel like it affects them in a positive way, gives them a little hope, hopefully gives them some peace, and I think for our members, I think it can do the same thing. I think it also, kids very much benefit from joining their parents and serving people that just aren't in the same situation as them right now, and so I think it serves both guests and volunteers.
When homeless folks are looking for a place, first of all, when they do arrive at Green Street, that is not the end, that they've arrived. That is the beginning. And all of the criteria is in order to get into the camp, for the most part, is that they have a belief in Jesus, and they have a belief, they have a strong faith. The door opens for them at that point in time. When they arrive, they're given clothing, they're given a tent, they're given food, they're given bedding and blankets to start and settle in and try and get their lives together to some degree. And it's magic. The camp is anchored by a church that makes it a holy place. And we need to nurture holy places. These less than homeless men and women need holy places to get to a better place.
The homeowners are very positively affected. They put in a lot of time to end up going through a program to work towards learning how to be a great homeowner, and Habitat equips them with all the tools that they need to be successful in being a homeowner. And so obviously that part of their journey is really great. And then I think as a build volunteer or as a meal volunteer, you are assisting Habitat's mission, which is putting God's love into action through the building of homes, community, and hope. And so when you are a part of that process, it's just really wonderful.
Well, I think you can really see a difference in the homeowners, and I love Habitat's model of making permanent changes in their homeowner's life. Instead of giving a man a fish, teaching him to fish, they have programs which teach them how to be a homeowner and make sure that they set them up for success. And that's one thing I really like, and you can see that that's evident throughout the process.
I love the way that being in community, it's a no-brainer, right? But it dissipates loneliness. So feeling like you can connect with other people, that's a major impact on people's lives. And being able to connect to other people around who God is, or even who God could be, that makes a difference. That's palpable, and that energy is it's contagious, which I love.
People who love kids, first and foremost, but people that love to have fun, people that want to bring the Bible and the Bible stories alive for kids, people that have a passion for storytelling, for getting down on their hands and knees and just really wanting to be with the kids of this church.
We really call it boots on the ground for the most part. Where we collect blankets, we collect clothing, we collect food, and we deliver them to the camp. We clean up the camp. It's all, it's a lot of that.
Willingness to show up and to take a risk, and just to say, here I am, God, use me.
Anybody can volunteer. All we want is a warm body to come on site. You have to literally show up. You do not need any tools. You don't need any prior experience. We just want you to show up and be there. We'll feed you breakfast, we'll feed you lunch, and send you on your way. And if you want to be the one providing breakfast and lunch, that's also awesome, because that is a huge part of our volunteer basis too.
Homelessness is a little bit scary to some. When you're working with homeless people, there are often times where you don't get gratitude. You don't get a thank you. Homelessness has is created a toll on homelessness as far as they're weary, and their physical self is just is really been difficult for them, and so that sometimes is scary. What we have to make sure, what we try to help people, is to not judge by what you see, and so hopefully if that. We say that, again, we all know that homeless folks, these homeless men and women, are God's people made in His image, and just as we are.
So tonight, what we want to talk about are the ways that God gives us to carry the love of Christ and begin impacting people's lives. And so I want to give Susan and Kevin and Jerry just an opportunity to talk about their ministries, let you know exactly what it is that they do that impacts people's lives. And we are so technologically advanced that we have little QR codes that while they're speaking, you can click on the QR code and go right to their website. So, Susan, I'm going to begin with you. Tell us a little bit about the work of the Family Center, and I got to hear an incredible testimony in our board meeting on Monday of somebody's life who was significantly impacted by the work that you do. Tell us a little bit about how they minister to families here in the Nashville area.
Thank you, Jay. Can everybody hear me okay? First, I want to apologize. I'm kind of the tail end of a flu that turned into a sinus infection that is slowly leaving my body. So, the Family Center has been around in the Middle Tennessee area for 38 years, and we're still one of the best kept secrets. And we've been working over the last several years very closely with the board to change that. Because we do, as Jay mentioned, incredible, incredible work. Our mission is breaking intergenerational cycles of childhood trauma. And our vision is creating resilient communities where all children thrive. At the core of everything that we do is the science behind ACEs. And ACEs are adverse childhood experiences or adverse community environments that have been proven to change children's brain development and to affect epigenetics. So when toxic stress occurs in a child's development, at certain critical points, but really at any point between birth and the age of 25, because our brains don't stop developing until we're 25 to 26 years old. That toxic stress creates difficulty for that individual as they become adults. It affects their ability to make good decisions. It affects their ability to be successful in their academics. It affects their ability to even have health outcomes that are positive later in life. We know so much more about neurology and neuroscience today than we did even 10 years ago. So what we do at the Family Center is work with some of the community's most vulnerable families. Our referrals come from the Department of Children's Services, the Department of Human Services, courts. We work with parents who are incarcerated and their families. We work with parents who come from human trafficking or substance recovery centers. We work with anyone who is willing to be vulnerable enough to kind of take their journey with us so that we can help them be more effective in parenting their children, more effective in creating or recreating those attachments that are so critical for children and their development. And then we also work to ensure that those connections continue even after parents move beyond wherever they may be at the moment. It may be bringing families back together because parents have lost custody of a child. It may be helping an incarcerated parent reconnect with those children after they're released. Whatever that might be, that's what we do. And that's our focus in our family resilience work. We started about 4 years ago also providing organizational resilience programming because we realized if we were going to be truly effective towards what we do, we needed the staff in those jails and in those courts and in those government agencies and other nonprofits to be equally trauma-informed. Because all the research showed that if you are not working compassionately with people who have been impacted by ACEs as children themselves, all you're doing is re-triggering them. So we have worked very closely with Davidson County Juvenile Court to become trauma-informed, and they've applied for trauma-informed juvenile court status through SAMHSA. We work with Davidson County Sheriff's Office staff, Rutherford County Correctional Work Center staff. We have a number of DC4, which is the drug court. I could go on and on. Jay wants me to shut up now, so. So between family resilience and organizational resilience, we feel like it's our formula towards success in achieving our mission and our vision.
And I think I found out on Monday that the Family Center is the only non-for-profit that's allowed in the Davidson County the court system, or in the jails to do these kinds of programs?
At the moment, yes. Okay. So right now we have special permission to do our programming in Davidson County Sheriff's jails. We do two different things specifically. We do groups for incarcerated parents that tap into all of the things I just mentioned. And then we also are actively involved in something called Father's Day Out right now, which allows certain fathers who are incarcerated to come off-site, not in the typical jumpsuits that you see people in jail in. They're more in street clothes. And they come off-site, and their children are also brought to that location. And then we work directly with the dads and with the children to utilize play, reading, activities to help with that engagement.
That's awesome. Kevin, one of the things I love about Habitat is last year we had started a class for folks who were new to the church to come in and kind of get assimilated to the church to meet other folks. And so I noticed that there were about 3 Sundays that they were out, and then they came back the next Sunday and were telling me all these amazing stories of having worked on a Habitat build. They had not waited at all to get plugged in, signed up to go and work on a Habitat build downtown here in Nashville. Tell us a little bit about Habitat and what you guys are doing now and why you're passionate about it.
In no way, shape, or form do we want to lead to a drop in church attendance on Sundays. However, we support Build Site Church, and when your build site or when your build day corresponds with a Sunday, we like to expand the walls of all of our church partners and say, just come have church on the build site. And so many of you that I've seen and I know through your build site experience, you've been out there on a Saturday and on a Sunday. And we love that. And we're so thankful that Woodmont Christian, as so many of you have heard me say, I feel like I'm here every time I turn around. I was here a couple of weeks ago for your missions fair. I think I'm coming back sometime in February. You take what you experience here, but you don't keep it here. You take it out there. Susan, I love hearing you talk about the ACE score and trauma-informed care. One of the things that we know is that when permanent housing is established in a family's life, ACE scores go down. And when we recognize the trauma that happens when metro school children, if I gave you the percentage, and I'm not going to quote it because it has changed a little bit, it would surprise you the number of metro school children who start a school in August and they don't finish that school year at that same school. They may change mid-year, and then they may be in another school year come spring. That's traumatic for that child. And we know that when churches like you partner with us to build a home and establish permanence, we know that reading comprehension goes up for those kids. Literacy rates go down. Teen pregnancy goes down. Graduation rates go up. College entrance goes up. All because of permanent housing. And you take a child out of a traumatic environment where I don't know where I'm going to live this time next year. I don't know if I'm going to start school next year where I started it this year. That's traumatic. I grew up here in Nashville. And my wife and I bought our first home in Oak Hill, just right over there. And we moved away. I moved away to pastor our first church in 1997, moved to Crawford, Texas. And that was part of my call, part of aligning with those values that are important to my life as the Holy Spirit has led me to enact upon that. And God said, go to Texas. And nowhere in that call, and I wish God had said something about the fact that, hey, Kevin, I want you to go to Texas, but don't sell that house. Because you're going to come back to Nashville in 2019 and you won't be able to afford that house. And that's true. We couldn't buy the house in Oak Hill that we sold in 1997. There is a reason to affect this crisis in Nashville for those reasons that you're talking about, to make the impact in a family's life, and that's through ministry. There's an economic reason. We need to maintain the diversity, the economic diversity, the life experience diversity in our city that I remember when I grew up here. And one of the ways that we impact that is that we want to build, as Vance said, and let me tell you, Vance and Christy, they're just knocking the ball out of the park with how they're helping Habitat through y'all's church. I was telling Rick that the build days are coming up in March, and he was saying, what are we going to be doing? And you're going to be building a house. That's what I can tell you at this point. Vance and Christy are doing just a great thing. But you're making an impact in the life of a family. And I think you're helping our city in the process, creating not just that home, but that community and the hope that comes when you love each other. And that's what you all are doing.
One of the things I love about what both of you, what Susan and Kevin both have said, is that you find yourselves moving into what you do because of a larger vision of, of God's call, or just something of being passionate about helping people, which is like you said, you said it's a value that I have, that I live into. Jerry, that's kind of one of the reasons you've moved into the position here in a way. We've talked about that. Share just a little bit about your vision for what you hope to do while you're here as missions coordinator. And also, if you want to sneak in a little bit of your own testimony, we'd love to hear a little bit of that as well.
Okay. So I'm new, still learning a lot as it relates to all of our missions here. And my role, as I see it, is really more for the church, right? To really help the church live its mission statement. I shared on Sunday, how when I first started coming here, I would come to church on Sunday and recite along with you, growing disciples by seeking God, sharing our love and serving others, right? And I would enjoy the service and I'd go home, and not much happened until the next Sunday. Now, I did have philanthropic efforts through the corporate lens in my role. And it's a very different lens, right? Because from the corporate end, I'm viewing it from a brand perspective and an expectation there. The lens I'm looking through from my role here is really more from a soul perspective. And I'll share, because I think it's important. I retired July 1 after 40 years in the financial services business, right? And when I retired, I knew I wanted to do something. I wasn't asking for anything or looking for anything, but I knew that my something was going to have to do with this church, because this church has had that kind of an impact on my life since I came here 11 years ago. And this church and my experiences here at the church played a big role in my decision to retire. Frankly, I don't think it would have happened if I had not experienced Woodmont. And it all went from that initial just coming on Sundays to, I think one of the first things I did was Jim and Emmy Thomas introduced me to our Unbound Guatemala effort, and then convinced me to go to Guatemala, where how I had forgotten from how I grew up to the world that I was in, that there's another whole world out there, right? And that we're taught, in the early teachings of the Bible and Jesus, to give back, to, as I said on Sunday, whatever you did for the least of mine, you did for me. I mean, that really is our message, and to love our neighbor and to love others. And I was in an industry where that's not exactly what our culture, instilled every day, and I don't take anything away from that. I was very blessed with a great career, but I'd lost a little bit of that. And then from that to some of the other things, some of our ministries, Room in the End and participating there with Kathy and the kids, to just a dinner group with a group of folks here, to being a deacon, to doing leadership, Woodmont. Every single thing I did, and the more I learned and the more opportunity I had to be with folks here at Woodmont in serving others, that's my story. It was experiential. So my call came through just how good it felt to connect with folks here, and then to be doing something where I knew we were helping others. And I knew that when I stepped away from work, I wanted to do something there, and I just simply offered to Clay, look, just plug me in, whatever is out there, just don't hesitate to ask. And I mentioned that to others, and then I guess he got with my wife, Kathy, and they decided I had too much idle time on my hands, and they took care of that. And it was interesting, because I didn't expect it when they asked me, look, because Steve and Deb left, I know I can't replace them, but would you be interested in coming on the staff and really kind of helping in our mission, help our people that come here. We've got so many families live our mission statement. That's what I view it, right? That I'm hopefully can be a connector, and an encourager and that kind of thing. And I'm looking forward to getting to know more about each of your ministries and all the other ministries, and getting with Rich and going out to Green Street. And, you know, I had the benefit of being at Room at the Inn on Friday night, and hopefully I can share the experience of what it's meant to me and can help some others in our congregation find that. And that's really what I hope to do. But I'm really grateful for this church and the opportunity.
You know, Kevin, as a pastor, oftentimes we would be asked a question, you know, people would ask us, how do I find my purpose, or what my calling is in life? And my response would often sound like, you know, what is it you're passionate about? But also, there's this, what are you gifted in? What has God given you to how you can love on other people? I just want us to talk for a moment as we, I want for people to hear, you know, how is it that you were gifted to know that this is what you needed to do with your life? You felt compelled to do this because of a gift set that you had been given. So whoever wants to go first can jump in there and talk about that.
I said this word earlier, and I've started using it in a conversation about call. I like to think of it as, how are things aligning? What is aligning in your life? I spoke to 75 sixth graders today at Oak Hill, and we talked a little bit about this. I will already tell you all that your maturity level, you're rising up to sixth grade level. I want you to know that, starting and ending and talking about this same thing. When I was a senior in high school at Brentwood Academy in 1985, Millard Fuller, the founder of Habitat, spoke at my high school. In no way, shape, or form was I able, or did I see, oh, well, you know, in 2023, I'm going to be on staff for Habitat for Humanity. But at that time, as a high school senior, growing up across the street at Woodmont Baptist Church, very active in the youth department, my parents were heavy lifters, always there when the doors were open. There was something that aligned in my life and what Millard Fuller was saying, and how I interpreted that through the people that taught me next door in church. There's an alignment there. And just staying present to those things which are pulling you forward as the Holy Spirit leads, convincing you to be you. And then I went on to pastor churches in Texas and in Kentucky and South Carolina. And you know what? We did Habitat. In South Carolina, after Katrina, we led 3 groups from South Carolina to New Orleans and worked on the Musicians Village. Did 2 trips there. And then after the Musicians Village was completed, post-Katrina, we came back and did another Habitat house. No way, shape, or form in those years did I know I'm going to be moving back to Nashville and I'm going to leave the pastorate and I'm going to be the director of faith relations at Habitat. But all along the way, there has been an alignment with who I was created to be and who I was pursuing to be as myself. I think that's how call works in its most beautiful way. Who are you? And are you fully allowing yourself to be yourself? I think call works, whether it's Green Street or Room in the Inn, Family Center, whatever. We are called to be the person God created us to be. And no one can know how best we are aligned to that call, be it vocational ministry or lay ministry. No one knows that better than we do. And the Holy Spirit's leadership in our life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the language of alignment, too, that things just sort of flow together when you feel like you are moving in that thing which God has called you to do. Susan, how about you? Like, how did you realize that you were gifted to do what you do? I think you're amazingly gifted at what you do.
Thank you, Jay. I'll pay you later. You know, when you talk about alignment and time, and I think there's alignment, but sometimes there's also this circuitous route that we take to get to where we are. And I think for me, Jay, it started, I was raised in New Orleans, as Jay mentioned. Was very involved from a very young age at the St. Mark's United Methodist Church. And I always remember the the song, Jesus loved the little children, all the children of the world, red and yellow, black and white. They are precious in his sight. At an unusually early age, I recognized the disparities. I recognized the racism. I recognized the segregation. I recognized the cultural differences that weren't being honored. And I don't know why. My mother, who was raised a very prim and proper Southern lady, used to say she thought they traded babies on her in the nursery, because I became very social justice focused. And throughout my career and anything that I've done, I have focused on trying to make sure that we always keep people who are vulnerable front and center. And I did that when I was a clinical social worker, working at Charity Hospital in New Orleans, working with AIDS patients, working with the homeless, working with trauma victims. I did that when I was a child and adolescent psychiatric social worker, where all of our kids were coming in through the courts. And I've done that at every organization that I've run as a leader in the nonprofit world. I think for me, I also realize that life is short, and we have a responsibility to be there for one another. We have a responsibility to truly share that love. And it takes a village to raise a child. I think I mentioned that before. And that village needs to be as inclusive as possible and as embracing as possible. So that's kind of been my personal journey.
And kind of how over time, as you served in all those areas that you mentioned, you kind of like this, I am doing exactly what my heart, what God is calling me into and what I'm equipped to do, yeah. And so Jerry, when we brought you on, I mean, one of the things that Clay and I talked about is we wanted someone who was an encourager and also somebody who knew how to work a spreadsheet. So we got both. But
I don't know about the spreadsheet.
But one of the things I love about you is just the encouragement and just your ability to communicate the passion that you have about the ministries you've been involved in, especially Unbound Guatemala, which is when I first met you, is probably when you were working behind the table for the first ministry fairs, where you and I first had the opportunity to interact. How do you feel God has gifted you to move into something now where you're going to be calling other people and equipping other people to move into their ministries?
The role I was in was leadership in organizationally. And got really involved in developing some programs and running some leadership courses and things like that on a nationwide basis. And what I found was that really the true core of the leadership really was all about Jesus' teachings, right? It was caring, truly caring about other people. And what I would find is our best leaders, that's where it started. You can have all these other things, and you could be at this level of the organization or whatever, but if you didn't demonstrate true concern and care for people and give them time, then it didn't translate. And so my role was, leading individuals in the organization. So I really, from that course and what I learned there, and a lot of readings and again, just thinking about the passion, I said, that's something I could do in church, right? Which would just be leading people, to find God by serving others. And I really do believe that. So I think the translation, and it just really occurred to me that so much about what we were teaching in leadership was truly things that you read all through the Bible, and certainly in the New Testament with all that Jesus asked of us. And again, and then this church brought it home for me. And so time will tell, but I'm excited about it.
One of the things I loved about what you shared in staff one day was you were talking about how you said, God has changed my life through this church. And I just remember thinking, man, what a message to share with others who come just looking for some way to get activated in their faith or to just move into discovering their purpose, is how God can move through you to find that thing here or in other places as well, where you can love on other people and begin to just have the Holy Spirit move through you and grow in that area where God has created you to grow in.
Yeah, and what I hope, it took me longer than I would have hoped to have realized that, right? And what I would hope in my message is you don't have to get to the point of retirement, I think, to enjoy church in the way that I'm enjoying it now, and I hope that I can communicate that to folks to where there is a balance there, and you can have both. I wish I had had more of this when I was in some of my roles, when I was full steam in the work mode. I think the priorities would have been a little different, but I'm grateful.
That's a perfect segue into the next question that I want to ask, which is, what advice would you go back and give your younger self, knowing what you know now about your calling and the things you've experienced? Like, what risks would you advise your younger self to take, or what things would you tell that person to take or to try doing?
I'll go. When I grew up across the street, I thought a call to ministry for me meant one thing. I thought a call to ministry for me meant, Kevin Roberts, I want you to be Bill Sherman. Some of you are chuckling because maybe you know Bill. And I'm still in contact with both Bill and Vita. I misunderstood that. That was my model. That wasn't me. Shortly before I graduated from Vanderbilt, Jack Fitzmyer, who was the associate dean at Vanderbilt Divinity School, took me to lunch. I'll tell you where we went. This is so long ago. We went to Houston's. You remember Houston's. And he said to me, Kevin, vocational ministry, and we could just take vocational off of that. Ministry is nothing if not ambiguous. There's not one role, there's not one way, there's not one format. Vocational ministry is ambiguous. And after being in the senior pastorate for a couple of decades, I realized I don't know if this is me anymore. And I'm so grateful that I got that advice. If I went back to talk to me back then, I would say, hey, you, learn that, know that. Ministry comes in so many different shapes and sizes. And as I grew and evolved, so did my call to ministry. I would tell myself to not panic and to moderate my responses and my reactions, and to believe in those people who invested in me when I was a young minister. To believe in what they saw, that when I hit the hurdles and I came close to the edge of the cliff, to remember who those people were and to believe them. Jeff Kinman saw something in me decades ago. And when I left the pharmaceutical business to go to be a full-time divinity student, you know what I did for a living when I wasn't in class? I worked for Jeff. And I stood on the back of one of those big mowers, and I dug holes to put trees in. And Jeff made it possible. When I started Vanderbilt Divinity School, we had an 8-day-old baby. And there I was, cutting grass. Jeff invested in me, and he believed in me, and he saw something in me. And I'm still in ministry today, part and parcel, because of Jeff and people like him. He said, I love you, I believe in you. Cut some grass for me and get that degree and keep going. And I'm still going because of that. And I love you. And thank you for being a part of who I have been as a minister for the last 27 years.
Susan, your work has been not so much in church work, it's been nonprofit work. What would you go back and say to your younger Grace King High School self?
Many things. Some of them not for public consumption.
Stay off Bourbon Street.
Yeah, stay off of Bourbon Street, off of Royal. I think when I was coming up in the world, it was really hard for women who wanted to be in a professional kind of environment. And it wasn't that we just had to break a glass ceiling, it was truly a concrete ceiling. And so I think I wouldn't give myself any different advice. I mean, we did what we had to do to get done what we had to get done. And I think that I would give younger people coming up today the ability to have a little bit more grace. The only thing that I think I would have done differently is because we had to work harder and smarter and faster and show that we had no emotion and we had, family. That's over here, right? Because we were trying to exist in a world where that was somebody else's responsibility and it was supposed to be ours. I think I would say find that balance. Find the balance, like you were saying, Jerry, earlier. One of the things we do with our staff who have families is I offer them a lot of flexibility. I encourage them to go to their kids' awards programs. The work can be done at different times. Let's flex. Go there. Be the homeroom mom when you can. Do what you need to do, because we won't be true to our mission if we're not encouraging people to do what they need to do as parents, to be there when their kids need to see them at sports events, at school, at church, wherever that might be.
That's a really good segue into the last question, which I want us to talk about, because I feel like I really want our leaders here to hear the message of fill the well so that you can share out of what God has put inside of you or out of your fullness. And so the advice I would give to my earlier self would be you can't share that which you don't have yourself. And so that's our last question is what does self-care in ministry look like for you guys? You're constantly on the front lines, just pouring into people, trying to change people's lives. But to sustain that requires that you're constantly filling the well somehow and getting your energy back up, finding that balance and peace. How do you guys do that?
Pickleball.
Well, I knew we were going to get pickleball in somehow in this. Well done.
This is the most pickleball church in Nashville, I think.
That's Charlie Bider, who's not here, by the way, but we got to give him all the credit for that.
I think it's prayer and meditation, finding that quiet time to kind of tune out all of the outside noise and to tune in to the God that's within all of us, to listen to that inner voice. I spend a lot of time reading. I invest in myself through a monthly massage. But I also find it in making those connections with people, those kind of really true human connections. And that to me is self-care. Self-care is, we have an annual holiday party, and we ask all of the parents to tell us one thing that would bring your child joy. And we try through an Amazon wish list to fulfill that. Almost 60% of our families are trying to raise kids on $30,000 a year or less. So these are not kids who are going to get what they asked for from Santa, right? And so for me, self-care is attending that event and seeing the joy on those children's faces, the relief on those parents' faces when they know that somebody's cared enough to make a difference. So it comes in a lot of different things for me. It depends on the week.
I love the idea of finding your joy as part of that, taking your pulse in ministry and And am I in a place where I'm getting satisfaction and joy? Do I feel a sense of purpose and mission and vision about what I'm doing? And those are just good ways to know that it's when you don't feel those things, you pull back and then start feeding yourself again so that you can go back and re-experience the joy. Kevin?
Susan, I agree with everything you said. I put those things into practice, reading, filling your bucket. And I learned this the hard way through the first half of my time as minister. And I am in no way, shape, or form any less of a minister and pastor today in my role at Habitat for Humanity as when I was standing in the pulpit every week. For me, the best thing I could do for my self-care was to do everything I could to be myself. Because when I was one person in the pulpit or one person in the church and then different anywhere else, you talk about taxing and exhausting. To be authentic in ministry is to be authentic yourself. And that is, for me, that was the best thing I could do for my self-care. And like I said, I paid the stupid tax on that early on. But I think that is ministry in a nutshell. If I may, you know, the old story about Abba Arsenius speaking to Yahweh when it was all said and done and approaching Yahweh, and Arsenius had his head bowed and approached Yahweh and said, Yahweh, I'm just so sorry I wasn't more like Moses. And Yahweh said, oh, Arsenius, I never wanted you to be like Moses. I just wanted you to be Arsenius. Kevin Roberts felt this call and felt this alignment to ministry. And I'm 55 and I still have to remind myself to be Kevin. And on those days and in those seasons when I am Kevin, in whatever role I may find myself, on this side of the pulpit or that, and let me tell you, on that side of the pulpit, 100% fewer committee meetings for me, and I like that. But I sleep better, and I'm just better in whatever role of ministry I find myself in. Self-care, be yourself.
That's a great place for us to begin, and maybe inviting some questions from people as we close up now. We want to just ask if you guys have some questions, and for the panel, something you've heard has just prompted you, or maybe you have a question about ministry or calling or spiritual gifts or living into your purpose. So we'd love to answer any questions you have. And we'll make some up here.
You can also ask about high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, since
We weren't joking about the stay off of bourbon. We weren't. Yes, Dana. Awesome.
We have Habitat sign-ups at the church, but I did not know about the family place till Jay told us about it a few weeks ago. So I assume y'all have volunteer roles as well, and you know.
we do, and we strongly encourage people, if they can, to commit to participating. We have several opportunities. We need volunteers to be our family coach liaisons in our virtual groups, to kind of sit there, help with onboarding some of our clients into the Zoom platform. So it's something that could be done, and then observing and then helping with some feedback. Maybe reaching out if one of our participants isn't on the Zoom and we're expecting them, because our family coaches can't do that at the same time they're leading a group, right? And it's a commitment in general of about 8 weeks, and the sessions are an hour and a half a week. We are also starting to finally open back up and do those groups in more public settings, in different community partner sites. We just last week signed a contract with the Department of Human Services for TANF funding that is to Gen in Purpose. So we are in the process of putting together a plan that will also increase our ability to incorporate volunteers in our work with parents who are incarcerated in their families. Because we're going to be doing more case management, looking for things like housing and utility assistance, clothing, education, those things that we know are often the barriers between moving out of being in a facility as an incarcerated individual for a number of years, back in with a family or back into the community so that they can be good parents with their kids. So we have those opportunities. We have a number of opportunities that are available. Beyond that, we're always looking for someone to sit and read a book and answer the phones for us at our office down on Thompson Lane. We have clients who do call, and we're often so incredibly busy with our limited staff. Just having somebody who could be that kind voice saying, good morning, it's the Family Center, how can I help you? And then maybe helping walk some of those clients through the registration process online or taking messages. That's a big thing that we could use help with. So if anyone's interested, feel free to reach out. I also have, just as an FYI, I brought our rack cards that talk about our programs and our ACE cards. We actually have ACE cards because we like to say 4 aces are not a winning hand. And it talks about those aces on the back, which include things like poverty. And then we started last year. We had a pilot almost a year ago with Metro Nashville Public Schools, and we have officially launched this fall our Teen Impact Parenting Series. So we're working with 9 Metro Nashville high schools here and 3 in Montgomery County with their teen parents. It's amazing how many teen parents there are in high schools and how many of them are currently foster children. So we have children having children. Those children are foster children who may, without real support, also have children who become foster children. So we're trying to break some of those cycles. And that's going to require a lot of case management and wraparound services as well. So we will be
communicating.
Talking.
Good. Any other questions for any member of our panel? Anybody? Yes.
Do you have any programs that have parents and children that deal with some of the social issues that are going on in schools today?
So in all of our programs, we talk to parents and in the groups and with parents and children around issues that are specific to them when we do the one-on-one family coaching. Sometimes those social issues come up in that. When we do our groups, we talk about some of the challenges that children experience as a result. Well, I think we had them. We just maybe weren't as aware. Bullying has been around. I can remember, they used to call me four-eyed metal mouth because I had braces and glasses, right? Oh, okay. But there is bullying. There are a lot of social issues that come up. So we work very closely with parents and their children to help them navigate based on their individual needs around some of those.
That's good. Any other questions? All right. I want to give Kevin and Susan and Jerry a big round of applause for being here tonight. Great having you guys with us. All right, so 30 seconds or less, shameless plug. You have a fundraising event coming up that we want to tell everybody about.
We do. It's called Change the Tune, and it is not an April Fool, but it is on April 1st. It's at Marathon Music Works. It's an incredible event. We encourage people to come in their favorite music festival attire. They can come in any music festival attire, but if they're going to come dressed for Burning Man, the only requirement is they have to come dressed. And this year we're super, super excited because Jay DeMarcus, formerly with Rascal Flatts, Jason Sheff, formerly with Chicago, have formed a new band called Generation Radio. And they have Steve Ferrone, who was the drummer with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and two local musicians here in Nashville, Chris Rodriguez and Tom Yankton, in the band, and they are performing for us that night. So it's a great night of food, fun, lots of activity, lots of festive. We actually even have some awards for Best Dressed. And then dancing and music from some incredible artists.
Kevin, do you guys have anything coming up with Habitat that you want to talk about?
Your build days are March 11th and 12th, 18th and 19th. Call Vance and Christy tonight. They have the registration links in their inbox. They're going to be looking out for you all to sign up for those 4 build days. We're going to be building traditional homes in a new neighborhood, Village by the Creek. It's in North Nashville, very close to where you've been building the past few years. Going to build 58 homes over the course of the next 2.5 years there. Your days are quickly approaching. I cannot promise you dancing on the build site. I'll sing, but we need you. The only thing you have to be able to do, what we say, to come build with Habitat is to be able to make a snowball. If you can do this, you can build a Habitat house. Thank you all for how you have partnered with us for so many years. We literally could not do it without you.
And we will give excused absences if you are in a Habitat build, right?
Build church on Sunday.
Jerry, you have anything just real fast that's coming up that you want to talk about or share?
Just, we still have a couple of weeks for anybody that might want to go on the Guatemala trip. So looking forward to that. But thank you all for being with us this evening.
And you guys will stick around for any questions that people have, all right? Let's all stand and we'll close with prayer. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you to our online audience for watching tonight. Thank you, Clay, in Fort Worth for watching.
I think he's actually here. I think he flew in tonight.
Did he he flies in tonight? Roy, what time does Clay come in tonight? Do you know?
He's coming back tonight later.
Okay, awesome. All right. Let's pray. Gracious God, we are so thankful for this church and the many ways that it ministers to this community and for the vision that you have laid on so many people to use their gifts to take the love of Christ and let other people know that they are valued, that they are loved, and that you speak life and wholeness and healing in this world. We thank you for giving us that voice to speak that healing. So we just pray as we seek your presence and seek out how we can serve, God, that you would lead us into those places where we can be used to our full giftedness. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you, guys. Yeah.